Well, hello. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're doing okay. I mean, I don't really know you, but I still hope you're doing okay. Whoever you are, if anybody's watching. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about a film that was first shown on Mystery Science Theater on December 2nd, 1989. It was a 1942 film called The Mad Monster, starring George Zucco, Glenn Strange, Johnny Down, and Anne Nagel. Now, this is the MST3K episode in which Tom Servo falls in love with a blender. For those new to the show, while I'm talking about a film that was shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000, I'm focusing more on the film and less about Joel and the Bots, because why should I try to repeat their hysterical jokes, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, The Mad Monster is a fun one, not so much for the film itself, though it has its moments. It's more fun just to talk about because there's a lot to talk about. And I'm not really sure if I can fit everything into the 10 or 12 minutes I allot myself per episode, but we'll see how it goes. It might run a little long. The film was a product of PRC, and PRC stands for the Producers Releasing Corporation, though in Hollywood at the time they were considered a joke, and many would say that PRC stood for Pretty Rotten Crap. And rightfully so. Most of their films were awful. They were a part of Poverty Row, and I really don't have time to go into Poverty Row, but they were a group of studios that made really low-budget B films. Basically, if you were in one of their films, you were either an unknown or your career was washed up, or at least you were on your way out. PRC was the cheapest of this group. They put the minimum amount of money and effort into every film they made. The all-time king of B-picture directors has to be Sam Newfield, who lived from 1899 to 1964. Sam was the brother of Sigmund Neufeld, who was a producer at PRC. Why Sam changed his name is a mystery to me. Anyway, the pair created a crapload of films. They cranked out film after film for PRC, sometimes making 20 or more films a year. Now, he directed so many films that sometimes the studio would use pseudonyms, names like Sherman Scott or Peter Stewart, to hide the fact that one person was directing so many films. From 1933 to 1958, he directed at least 150 films, the majority of those being westerns. Now, the film is considered one of Sam's wartime horror films. Films that were inspired by the shocking Nazi experiments and torture that was taking place in Europe at the time. You know, a mad scientist does strange experiments to create a super army, that type of thing. Now, some of the other films he directed, which were shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000, were I Accused My Parents, Radar Secret Service, and The Lost Continent. Can you say rock climbing? Now, the thing about Sam is, well, he was never fancy in the way he directed. He was known for strictly sticking to budgets and getting his films done on time. For the most part, he would just set up a camera right in the center, point it at the actors, have them do their lines, and maybe if he was feeling a bit creative, he would sneak in a close-up here and there, but you know. Fred Meighton was the writer of this classic. He lived from 1885 to 1955, and he was the screenwriter for over 168 films, mostly for Poverty Row. But I really don't know that much about him. I couldn't find a lot, so let's move on. Now, this film clocks in at about 1 hour and 17 minutes, which was an epic compared to the average Poverty Row film. Most were barely over an hour long. But the big question is, did this have to be 77 minutes? Anyway, so what is The Mad Monster? Dr. Lorenzo Cameron lives with his beautiful daughter on a large isolated estate. They have a simple-minded groundskeeper named Petro. Now, Dr. Cameron, we quickly find out, during an imagined conversation with ghost-like apparitions of a few other scientists, that he was ridiculed by the medical community as a charlatan.
Your crazy experiments are a disgrace to science.
Yes. Those are the very words you used in denouncing me to the faculty. Professor Fitzgerald.
He has a theory that wolf's blood transfusions could be given to a human being, giving the human wolf-like traits, and therefore he can build a wolfman army, I guess, to battle Nazis. That's what I get out of it. He has a devoted daughter who can't imagine her father doing anything wrong. She's lonely, living in isolation, and misses her boyfriend, the young, handsome newspaper reporter, Tom Gregory. So now, in his own lab, he conducts experiments on Petro, injecting him with a serum that turns him into sort of a werewolf that goes around killing people. Surprisingly, a child is killed, although off camera, which gives the film some real stakes. This might have been inspired by the 1931 film Frankenstein.
No, you're hurting me! No!
Anyway, Dr. Cameron uses the beast to get revenge on those who made him look a fool. It's not exactly the best plan. Cameron needs to go with Petro and give him one injection right there, and then trick the victim into giving him a second injection after he leaves.
I shall give him the injection if you're not here by 12.
At 12, precisely.
How is he going to use this to create an army, I wonder? Now, the young child that was killed rouses the curiosity of Cameron's daughter's boyfriend, Tom Gregory. Remember, he's a newspaper reporter. I bet you can see where this is going and who will die, but you might not have imagined a well-timed lightning strike.
Pedro! Get back! Pedro! Pedro! Get back! Pedro!
Now, the star of this film is George Zucco as Lorenzo Cameron. Zucco was a British character actor who lived from 1886 to 1960. He was one of those actors who had a pretty successful career, but then got involved in horror films, like The Mummy's Hand from 1940, The Monster and the Girl from 1941, and The Mummy's Tomb from 1942. From that point on, he mostly found work only in B pictures. In 1991, his widow said, when they started making George do horror pictures, it was a big mistake. A big mistake. Anne Nagel plays his daughter Lenora. Anne lived from 1915 to 1966 and had a 25-year career playing in many different types of films, but never really had any big success. And apparently, she had a pretty miserable life. She was once called one of Hollywood's true hard luck gals. After having a bit of success in the late 30s and early 40s, she wound up in Poverty Row Films, and by the late 40s was doing mostly uncredited work. When she died of cancer at the age of 50, she was virtually penniless. Johnny Downs plays our young hero Tom Gregory. Johnny lived from 1913 to 1994 and was an American actor, singer, and dancer. He was a child actor who played in the Our Gang shorts from 1923 to 1926. He remained active in films, television, and theater throughout the 1960s. After film acting, he sold real estate and became a respected amateur tennis player, and even hosted a local kids show in Coronado, California. And then there was Glenn Strange as the mentally challenged Petro. The 6'4" tall Strange was best known for taking over the role of Frankenstein when Boris Karloff decided to give it up. But perhaps he was more famous for Sam Newfield, the bartender in 222 episodes of CBS's Gunsmoke television series. Glenn had a remarkably long career from 1931 to 1951, which included 300 films and 500 television episodes. In this film, he's doing his best Lenny from Of Mice and Men.
Oh, we done a lot of work tonight, and I slept almost an hour, and I had the awfulest dream. Go to bed, Pedro. Yes, sir, Doctor.
Now, the film is slow, but it does have its moments. I like the fact that the killing starts right away, and I like the fact that there's a twist put on the whole werewolf thing. You know, it's caused by science rather than magic like in the Wolfman. Though the exposition done by Dr. Cameron's colleagues in that fantasy sequence, well, that could have been done a little better. And the way the monster kills isn't suspenseful at all. Just give Cameron some sort of mind control over his creation. And then you could have done something a bit better, you know, sneaking in the dark, surprising his victim, rather than have a man just sitting in a chair waiting to get killed, it's like. And like usual, the female in the film has no agency whatsoever. Now, as far as Mystery Science Theater 3000, it picks up a little after our last film, The Aztec Mummy, though it is still pretty slow. Again, they're finding their way. The film itself was cut down to about 69 minutes. That's about 8 minutes chopped out of it, probably for time, but does it really matter? Come on, not really with this film. The show is starting to come together, but Dr. Forrester, played by Trace Bellew, is still stiff and has not yet found his character. The bots are still waiting for Joel in the theater rather than being there for the invention exchange, though I did like the Mads invention, the fire-breathing Godzilla. That made me laugh. One of the highlights of the episode, I think, are during the transformation scene. There's some really funny bits there.
Isaac Asimov.
Lecherous scientist.
Amish farmer. Quaker Oats man.
Dr. Cornelius from Planet of the Apes.
A cure for baldness at last. I'm calling it Helsinki formula.
Line, please.
And I like this scene.
Skipper!
Little buddy!
Skipper!
Little buddy!
They would do this often in other films, and it works really well in the later episode called The Pod People, but you know the Pod People.
Uncle Bill,
Jody,
Buffy,
Mr. French,
Mrs. Beasley,
Chief McCloud.
Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Next week, we'll be doing The Corpse Vanishes, the Bela Lugosi movie, which was the 4th film shown on Mystery Science Theater. I really like this movie, and I'm not joking about that, but I'll talk more about this next week. I want to thank you again. If you have any comments about this movie or next week's movie, please send them to me at coffeewithjeff@gmail.com, coffeewithjeff@gmail.com, or just leave a comment below, whatever, I don't care. I'd like to hear your thoughts on either of these two movies. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with The Corpse Vanishes. Bye.